final words in the Steam description for Mouthwashing are unnerving, if nothing else, and have sat with me. These 4 words are what steeled me for what Mouthwashing would ultimately deliver, and deliver it did. The characters were the only company I had in the back ends of a giant and indifferent spacescape. I hung on every word, waiting with bated breath for the next moment or character interaction that would make the game live up to the pretext the Steam page had given me. For the few that don't know, Mouthwashing is a survival story chronicling a team tasked with delivering some goods through space. Their plans to eventually return home are interrupted when one of the crew members purposefully collides with an asteroid. The story unfolds in a non-linear fashion with consistent time skips forward and back so as to deliver information in a more dramatic way. Mouthwashing's main menu starts with a slow pan of a disturbed figure overlooking an artificial sunset, the soundtrack almost betraying what we're even seeing. Beginning the game shows us some basic stats regarding the crew with an ominous message at the end. We fade into the Tulpar's cockpit where we're informed a collision is about to happen unless we steer the ship slightly to the left. For reasons unknown, this is completely ignored. In fact, we even go as far as to override the autopilot to ensure this crash happens. We jump forward 2 months and we get our first glimpse of the crew. The cast is small, so introducing them shouldn't be tough. Our characters comprise a team aboard the Tulpar, a space voyager tasked with delivering goods as I mentioned earlier. There's Curly, former captain, we'll see him later. Co-pilot and fan favorite character Jimmy, who has a long-standing friendship with Curly. Anya, the adorable medic who loves to study and is more on the reserved side. Swansea, the mechanic who looks like an ugly bastard from a dojin. And Daisuke, the intern whose clueless and yeah bro energy brings some much-needed levity to an otherwise dreary crew. Stray thought, Mouthwashing has the most satisfying dialogue progression sound effect I've ever heard. Immediately we notice a couple things. One, wow, this break room is really nice, all things considered. And 2, emergency sealant is peppered throughout the entire ship as a response to the crash. Emergency sealant is a really cool idea as far as sci-fi, really. Either way, the group debates whether they want to start digging into their cargo reserves for survival, as large parts of the ship are no longer accessible, and with a little elbow grease, it should be possible to get to the storage unit. Swansea thinks it's a bad idea as he's still expecting to eventually get paid. I feel like that should be the least of their worries, but whatever. Swansea is teaching Daisuke how to be a better mechanic and is unreasonably hard on him, but Daisuke assures us it's mostly bark and no bite. I personally think the dude's a massive tool, but whatever, I suppose. It's time to give the game's most iconic character his meds, as Anya doesn't have the stomach to do so. The character is revealed to be Curly. It's explained that he tried to steer the ship into an asteroid. Since he was in the cockpit when this happened, he took a huge part of the crash head-on, leaving him with a horrific appearance, writhing and suffering. The reasons for why he's done this are unclear as of now, but that doesn't stop Anya from reflecting on why. Jimmy tells Anya that Curly tried to take them all down with him, but as far as he's concerned, there's 2 reasons to keep him alive. Presumably one of them is to get answers. It's not explained whether this world has technology capable of returning Curly to a non-vegetative state, complete with his skin and all. Given the crew's dedication to keeping him alive, I'd assume they're able to, at least back on Earth. Giving Curly his pain meds is a process that is deliberately uncomfortable, and the game achieves this very well, forcing you to sit with every sound effect. We're not far in the story and already we have lots of information on how these characters interact. It's easy to point the finger at Swansea as the douche of the group, but Jimmy's indifference at Anya's grief is very concerning. There's a lot of moments in this game where Anya's crying and no one ever hugs her. It's very frustrating to watch. Speaking with Swansea in one of the hallways reveals, well, he's really stubborn, absolutely refusing to allow anyone into the utility room until he's taken care of the emergency sealant foam and other damages. There's more to Swansea than just being rude, but that'll have to wait until later. After this, you'll get the code scanner, an item only the captain is allowed to wield, and with Curly being in no state to watch over the crew now, it falls to Jimmy. You'll be using this a lot, and it's a neat little device. Casting it over black squares reveals 4-digit codes you can use to access several parts of the ship. It's commonly the thing you'll need to get to the next story beat. It's also something that interrupts the narrative a lot, but pacing is important, and even if gameplay isn't central to these kinds of indies, taking a brief break from the plot, even to do something as mundane as scan a code, goes a long way. Either way, Jimmy uses the code scanner to open the door to the cargo, but before we can go inside, time skips backwards to 7 days before the crash. This time we see Curly's perspective. Anya is doing psyche evals for the crew and criticizes Curly for choosing predictable and safe answers to the exam's questions. She wants to get to know her crew more. Chemistry is an important thing when you're in the middle of space with nothing but 4 others to keep you company. It's especially important considering there isn't much to read inside the Tulpar. If you look through the environment, the team has at least 14 copies of a book called The Pipeline. Not counting duplicates, there's probably only 4 things to read in this bitch. Curly brushes off Anya's criticism of his results, but volunteers to do the psyche eval for Jimmy since he's never been compliant when it comes to these things, and their history as friends will probably make the process easier. Last time Anya tried to eval him, he refused and made a joke about how he's attracted to cartoon horses. If Jimmy wasn't unlikable before, finding out he's a brony will certainly tip the scales. Curly meets with Jimmy in the hallway, explaining he's gonna do the eval for him. He even asks if the cartoon horses thing was something he was born with or a more recent development, which got a laugh out of me. Jimmy reluctantly agrees to do the exam. Following the pipes at the tail end of the hallway reveals a huge fall and an endless crimson ocean. Eerie sounds and music accompany broken girders and tangled debris, no doubt referring to the awful crash looming on the horizon. The sun slowly envelops us in a world of white, save for a distant black door. Opening it puts us in the cockpit with Jimmy, where the eval commences. Curly is lenient in his eval of Jimmy. They start talking off the record, and Curly explains that he's surprised at how well Jimmy's taken to being co-pilot, considering how he struggled back on Earth. We don't know exactly what that means, but it's probably safe to assume Jimmy was often between jobs, perhaps even getting involved with the wrong crowd and the like. Jimmy says he can tell something's up with Curly, to which Curly admits there is. Curly makes a good captain, yeah, but he's faced with a scary prospect. Is this all he'll ever be? Should Curly move on to greener pastures at some point? We don't really know, and neither does he. I like this angle a lot. It's very human. Even if these are pilots hurtling through space in a make-believe ship, moments like this root the characters in reality. Even if you have a fantastical setting, stuff like this will give people a way to relate to your characters. The fax machine goes off, because I guess there isn't a more sophisticated way to communicate with the crew than a damn fax machine. Opening it, we find out that Pony Express is... The team finds out the contents of the packs they're delivering are mouthwash, which is not only useless to them, even as a disinfectant, but just why? All of this, more than a year of their lives in the bottomless stomach of space, for mouthwash? It's as if their employer, Pony Express, is playing a cruel prank on them. Swansea makes the most of a bad situation and drinks a bottle of it for its alcohol content. The commercial did say it doesn't leave a bad taste in your mouth. He ends his years of sobriety doing this. They're not sure if they're making it home in the first place, so might as well, I guess. The game treats Swansea drinking this as a big deal by swelling up the music in the background, but I just found it kind of funny, if nothing else. This scene does a great job of rubbing salt in the wound. It'd be a sad situation regardless of what they're delivering, but the fact that it's something as mundane as mouthwash makes everything seem much more futile. We find ourselves back in the cockpit as Curly. Whatever news he got from corporate, it isn't good. He goes to break the news to the crew, but before he can, it's not technically Curly's birthday, but considering these hauls last over a year, they get to celebrate whenever, though they're limited to one birthday party a trip. Curly is the only one with clearance to handle the food items, so he actually has to make his own cake. Tragic. Swansea really likes the company's cake recipe. This is alluded to in his appearance. The subtle storytelling is immaculate. Making the cake is quite tedious, but since when was gameplay ever the focus of titles like this? He can't contain the news any longer. He explains that Pony Express went under, and that after they receive their paycheck for this expedition, it's over. Predictably, this is bad news for everyone. Anya breaks into tears, Swansea gets frustrated. It's here Jimmy decides to make a giant tool out of himself, lambasting Curly for daring to think about a career outside of being a captain, interpreting his words from earlier as meaning he's too good for them, that it's okay if they want to settle into a low-ends job like delivering goods through space, as long as he's allowed to move on. In his eyes, Curly can now do this guilt-free. This is very stupid. Curly loves his crew, warts and all, and was dealt a dilemma many-faced. He just wasn't sure if he wanted to be a space captain for the rest of his life. But Jimmy is a troubled one and chooses to manufacture a problem to take out his frustration at being laid off. Sounds like my ex, TBH. Ominous music plays as the knife sinks into the calorie-rich cake. And just like that, we're 3 months after the crash. Jimmy awakens to Curly's groaning and starts to administer his meds. The process is as unattractive as ever. Any body horror-like story element that involves living in unbearable pain or suffering has always really disturbed me. The Curly scenes remind me of Johnny Got His, an anti-war story that chronicles a soldier's life after losing his arms, legs, eyes, and bottom jaw. It's as grotesque as it sounds, but mouthwashings might be even worse. The burnt skin and constant screaming are horrific. The meta area dissolves into an unlit break room. We sit down to share some cake with Super Meat Boy. For as disturbing as his features are, Curly is the least distracting character in this game. I love the PS1 aesthetics, but there are occasions where the face textures on the cast are distracting. Lots of emotion and character depth is conveyed well through the dialogue, so this isn't as big an issue as you'd think it'd be. It's not as bad with Curly because he's meant to look unsettling anyway. 4 months after the crash, we are asked to check on the crew. Swansea is blasted on mouthwash, making him prime fodder for a YouTube outro. Anya gets chewed out because she hasn't suffered enough, apparently. Jimmy complains about what is basically mouthwashing's gameplay, like having to get the pills and stuff. I take it he wouldn't care for Telltale games. Either way, we cut to Swansea chasing Jimmy with an axe. Fortunately for Jimmy, he's protected inside the cockpit for now. Obviously, some context is purposefully being left out here. But what could Jimmy have done to extract so much rage out of Swansea? Did he eat the company cake? Before we can find out more, time skips again. Moonlight spills over an artificial ocean in the break room of the Tulpa. Anya and Curly converse about a dead pixel that's hard to see on the screen. Curly makes a comment about how he can't see it because he's used to looking at the bigger picture, which is perfectly in line with everything we know about him so far. Anya asks why the doorways to the bedroom chambers can't lock, but the medical room can. Curly says this is for safety purposes. If only he knew.